Hey everyone, I'm Malagos, and this is a quick video on the basics of spaceflight in Star Citizen. That'll include the 6 flight axes, characteristics of the flight model, and understanding flight-related UI elements. We're starting out in Arena Commander Free Flight. This is the best place to practice the basics without any distractions. So, if you just picked up SC and want to practice, this is the first place you should go. And obviously, this is something you need to practice to perfect, but I highly recommend reading the Arena Commander manual. It goes into great detail about all this, and you'll just learn so much from reading it. I'm using a Gladius in this video, but the principles will be the same for any ship. Like airplanes, Star Citizen spacecraft have control over 3 rotational axes. First is pitch. This is moving the nose of the ship up and down. Move the mouse straight up or straight down to pitch. Next is yaw. This is moving the nose of the ship left and right. Move the mouse left or right to yaw. And finally we have roll. This rotates the ship around the front to back axis. So, left or right. By default, I think that's A and D on the keyboard, but I would recommend using Q and E for left and right roll. Now let's move the ship. Advance the throttle to full by double tapping W. This will move you forward. The throttle is the lower vertical bar to the left of the gun sight. Note the top speed. This is going to be different depending on the ship you're flying. And even though we are in space and there shouldn't be a top speed theoretically, this top speed exists to promote interesting gameplay. Dogfight at 2 kilometers a second would not be particularly interesting. CIG is considering changes to the top speed. They've been exploring either making it acceleration-based, so that a light ship with a powerful engine will have a dynamic top speed that's higher than a heavy cargo ship that's fully loaded. Or they might put in a universal top speed, but we'll just have to wait and see how that pans out. To stop, double tap S to bring the throttle to 0. Now is a good time to learn that since we're in space, ships will drift much more than an atmosphere. This means that the ship will often move in a direction different from where the nose is pointing. Fortunately, SC has a UI element that will show you the actual direction your ship is moving. To see it, let's turn while moving. Throttle up, and we'll do a yaw to the right. The cross right in front of us in the center of the screen is known as the gun cross. It shows where the nose is pointing. The circle with the caret to the left of the gun cross is known as the total velocity indicator, or TVI. This is showing us the actual direction of the ship, which way, where it's moving. The TVI has an inverse twin. This is the anti-total velocity indicator. This will show you the direction that you're moving away from. We'll see this a little bit later whenever we start going backwards. Unlike atmospheric flight, ships in space can freely move in any direction. We call this translational. For example, we can strafe straight up. I use the X key for this. We can go straight down. I use the Z key for that. We can go left or right. I use A for left and D for right. We can even go straight backwards. I use the S key. Note that the TVI that was in front of us is now the ATVI. The caret is pointing down, meaning that we're going backwards. So this is the opposite direction that we're heading. And lastly, we can strafe forward independently of the throttle. I use the W key for this. Again, I use custom keybinds, but you should definitely use whatever you're most comfortable with. I do highly recommend, though, having all 6 of these strafe keys very accessible, because you'll be using them a lot. Note that combining 2 or more strafe actions, including throttle, will be additive. This means that the ship will move in the angle that's a result of adding the components. For example, strafing forward and right will move the ship in a 45-degree angle, forward and right. And like we mentioned, throttle will count. So going full throttle and strafing right will move the ship in a 45-degree angle, forward and right. So full throttle, right strafe, and the TBI you can see is moving to the right, indicating we're going in a 45-degree angle, forward and right. It's also important to realize that this means that a ship at full throttle cannot cannot strafe backwards. The two vectors will cancel each other out. So we're at full throttle forward. If I go to strafe backwards, all it's going to do is come to 0 and I'll be stopped. So combining the 3 axes of rotation with the 3 axes of translation, that means strafing up, down, left, right, forwards, backwards, we have what is known as 6 degrees of freedom, or 6 DOF, if you ever see that written out, abbreviated. Few other games utilize 6 degrees of freedom in the same form, and that's why SC Flight can seem pretty complicated at first. But we do have some tools to simplify this SC Flight. The default flight control mode is one example. This is known as coupled mode, and when activated, the UI element down to the right of the gun cross will be illuminated. And for just to contrast that, if it's off, it'll be darker with an X over it. So it's a coupled is a slightly simplified way to fly with 6 degrees of freedom. Barring any strafe inputs you give the ship will try to move in the direction of the nose, kind of like an airplane almost. But as we saw during the throttle exercise, ships will drift in this mode, especially if you make a sharp turn. So you can see that the TVI is not where the gun sight is, right? And the sharper we make the turn, the farther away it will get. So this is a gentle turn, the TVI is off. The more extreme you make it, the TVI will go until you basically have lost it, and it kind of zips around the edge of your screen. One way to reduce this is to throttle down or slow down, or use the space brake. So if we're heading at our top speed of 240 meters per second, using the space brake, we'll slow ourselves down, and that way the turns we make, will drift less. Although of course our speed will be reduced. And just remember that although we call it the space brake, it's actually just telling the thrusters to put out force in the required direction to stop the ship. So it's not some magical brake; it's just the thrusters in reverse. So if we are at full throttle and use the space brake, we'll come back to 0 meters per second. Also remember that ships in Star Citizen have a top speed. Without a top speed, a ship moving forward can just add thrust to move in a different direction. But of course that would mean increasing your total speed. When maneuvering with the limitation of a top speed, the ship is first going to have to spend time slowing down before maneuvering. So moving at top speed, we'll throttle up. And you can see that whenever we add strafe, let's say we'll go up, the TVI takes a while to actually make it all the way up there when it comes up. The best method for making this process faster and maneuvering faster is using boost. And that's activated by holding the shift key, the left shift key. So when we hold boost and strafe up, you can see how much faster the TVI goes up. This is without boost. This is with boost. So boost functions by giving extra power to all thrusters for as long as the boost key is held down or until boost runs out. So unlike some other games where boost increases your top speed, in Star Citizen boost is all about acceleration. You can see how much boost you have in the boost meter located above the throttle. So if we hold down and do a boost maneuver, we can see it ticks down from 100 to 90 to etc. And here it is right above the throttle indicator, and it will slowly recharge as of now. It's still kind of a relatively scarce resource though, so use it sparingly. The best time to do that is when you're making a large change in direction, so you minimize the time that you're stopped or going very slow. So we talked about boost, we need to now cover Gsafe mode. Without getting into too much detail, even though we're free of the influence of planetary gravity out here in space, we still have to worry about G-forces. Although of course that name is pretty confusing. Basically the first law of motion, that objects in motion will remain in motion, which is also the law of inertia, still applies in space. So the blood in our pilot's body will continue moving when the ship pitches up sharply, meaning that the motion will carry it towards the pilot's feet. And obviously that's not good news for the pilot's brain. Gsafe is the flight mode that prevents your ship from performing maneuvers that will cause your pilot to black out, red out, or pass out in any way from G-forces. It's activated and turned on by default for normal flight. But it's related to boost because boost deactivates Gsafe when it's used. You can see the indicator down to the right of the gun sight, or the gun cross. So when we do a boost, and rotational direction is very important here, we'll see the Gsafe turn off first of all. But pitching up will cause us to black out if we do it too slow. too much, and you can see the screen fades, and eventually we black out. Now if we pitch down, we're going to cause a red out as soon as my guy recovers here. So again, pitch down, Gsafe's off, and this is going to be known as a red out, meaning the blood is flowing up into our pilot's brain, and we have a very similar effect to blacking out. Now finally, the last form, the last way that G-forces can act on our pilot, at least in terms of disabling him, is from yawing. So if we yaw too tightly, left or right, we'll also incapacitate the pilot. So we'll do a boost, a very sharp yaw to the right here. And there we go, he looks down at his feet again, he's incapacitated. Which is not something you want to have happen in the middle of a dogfight. We've been using coupled mode so far, and we discussed how it works. Now let's talk about decoupled mode. This allows the ship to continue on its course in the absence of any strafe inputs that you give it. When hitting decoupled, and I use the tab key for this, the TVI is completely separated from the nose, at least in terms of, the ship will not try to move in the direction of the nose anymore. So that basically, it'll move on its current course, even though the nose is moving in perhaps completely opposite directions. That's the ATVI right there. So just remember, if you're in decoupled mode, that you have to, tell your ship to slow down. Throttling down doesn't do anything anymore. You have to hit the space brake or strafe in the opposite direction. And also remember that there are separate keybinds for all the strafe inputs in decoupled mode, and so you have to set those in the options. They're different than coupled. And again, your ship is completely drifting, and it's only taking new inputs. It will not slow itself down or turn or anything like that. You have to do all of that manually via strafe commands. There is another flight mode called ComStab. This mode slows your ship down so that you don't drift, and so that TVI matches the gun sight as much as possible. However, in combat, this is going to set you up to get obliterated in short order, and for now, do not use ComStab. There's also a keybind for match speed of your target, and I often hear people talking about how they try to use match speed, and it might not be working, and all these other things about it. It's just a bad choice to use match speed. You need to learn to manage your speed through your throttle, strafing, and braking, and by reading your target's maneuvering with your own eyes. There are a few ways to control Star System ships with the mouse. Starting in patch 1.3, look ahead mode, or if you see it written abbreviated LAM, is the default mode for mice. This mode will steer the ship and the gimbals and your pilot's eyes all at the same time. To turn it off, hit right Alt plus M. This will put you into interactive mode. It's kind of the same, except it won't move your pilot's eyes anymore, and it also frees the mouse up. And because the look ahead mode input seems very dampened and slow right now, I recommend using IM. Hopefully CIG will adjust look ahead mode to make it a little bit more fluid. So these two modes, look ahead mode and interactive mode, as you can see, you can put the mouse in a location and the ship will continue rotating. This is known as a virtual joystick function. So the last major mouse control mode I'm going to talk about is relative mode. So we can hit that by using Control C. Now the ship's nose will chase the cursor. And I won't go into too much detail about this, but you have to change settings and stuff to make this viable, because often in Star Citizen dogfights you have to turn quite a bit, and in this case you have to lift the mouse a lot, which is really bad. So you have to make sure that your curves and everything are set up in order to use this mode appropriately. Since the game's tutorial includes them, the last thing we're going to talk about today is taking off and landing. But I do think this is going to change relatively soon, and it's probably the least important part of this lesson. Unlike the tutorial, we're going to start by landing. Once if you're in free flight, you can identify a landing pad by the green circle instead of another green circle. Once you've done that, you can hit the N, turn on landing mode. It might be called precision mode in the future. And in this mode, we can target landing pads like we would ships normally. So as we approach the landing pad, we can request to land with the middle mouse click, scroll wheel click. It'll show these nice little red arrows to lead us towards the landing pad, and this green, bright green square box will indicate where we want to land. We could hit M to automatically land us with autopilot, but we want to learn how to manually land in case we need to do it in a situation where we can't, automatically do it, or we can just land anywhere. So the best way to land is to use decoupled mode. But for whatever reason, when we're in landing mode or requested landing mode, decoupled is turned off. So what we're going to do is we'll line ourselves up using landing mode and coupled mode. Once we're in that position, though, we're just going to turn it off. Now, we can't really see where we are anymore, but it's going to let us use decoupled mode. So what I'm going to do is hit tab to turn off coupled mode, and then Z to start drifting down very gently. Now once we go inside the cockpit, you can see landing gear deploying. And we'll have gently come down on landing pad in a smooth fashion. Without decoupled mode, you have to strafe down, and it's kind of jerky. You can do it that way, certainly, but it's a little trickier. Taking off is obviously really easy. We just strafe straight up, and you can see the landing gear indicators below the throttle going on and off. So those are the basics of Star Citizen flight. Once you've practiced and understood these fundamentals, you're more than ready to move on to combat. So I'll see you for that.